to the Titanic quarter, and what I was given was a blank page. There is, as I'm sure you've noticed, no church down here. I do not have a little church with a little steeple. I have no pews, no organist, no vestry, no choir, no mothers' union, no men's breakfasts, no little hymn books, no little prayer books, no minister dresses to wear. It was just a complete fresh start, a complete blank page. Now, if any of you were given a blank page, imagine that you were told, those of you in government, imagine you were told, alright, you can just kind of start government all over again. What would you do differently? Those of you in politics, yeah, you can kind of just start all your parties and stuff. We can start that all over again. Those of you in development, imagine you're right back there at the very start. You've got a blank page. You can do anything. It's an incredibly freeing, exciting thing to have the blank page. So I actually spent the first couple of months of my time in post down here with a knapsack full of physical blank pages. Somebody described the Titanic quarter to me as the best blank page that the church has had in Ireland since St. Patrick stepped off the boat. So I spent a couple of very happy months walking around with this bag full of blank pages. I would sit down with people, we would have a cup of coffee, I would get out the pages, and I would just say, alright, here goes. Let's start filling this in. We can do anything down here. We're not bound by any traditions, any existing interest groups. We can do anything. What does church look like when you're allowed to start it again with a blank page? Now, in some ways, that's quite a difficult question to answer. Some people took a little while to get going, but back to the Belfast bus. We're maybe not so great at dreaming big dreams of the future, we're great at complaining about the present. So I got people to complain about the present. If they could go to their hometown or to where they live, if they could just sweep away all the churches there, if they could start all over again, if they could start the presence of church in Greater Belfast, in Mossley, and Larne, and Hollywood, and Glengormley, and Bangor, and wherever they come from, if they could start all over again, what would they do differently? Now, because that gave people a chance to moan, that got them going, and we started to fill loads of the blank pages. Fascinating what came from those early days. This was the first, the most prominent, and in some ways the most significant thing to come through from all those blank pages. Anything but this. Now, what that means is that what I heard from all the people that I was chatting to was that, this is supposed to represent that typical situation that you find in most parts of Belfast, in Mossley, where I come from, in Hollywood and Larne, where I've worked. You always go down the main street and you pass by, there's the Church of Ireland, there's the Presbyterian, there's the Catholic Church, there's the Free Presbyterian, there's the Methodist, there's the Independent Methodist, there's the Baptist, there's the Gospel Hall, there's the Brethren, there's the Elim. You just have all of these boxes, all of these separate church traditions, often sort of operating in their own orbit and in quite a separate way. And that was the thing that I heard from everyone that I was talking to down here. That was the frustration. What can we do with the blank page down here? Anything but this. Can we dream of the possibility that the Titanic quarter won't be filled up with an endless, ever-escalating number of church buildings and church ministries, just like we see in so many other parts of the city? We sometimes call church buildings sermons in stone. Sometimes that's got the best possible definition. Sometimes the grandeur of a church building is supposed to make you think of the glory of God. The stories of the Bible are told in the stories on the stained glass windows. Sermons in stone. I think the word sermons in stone can sometimes have a slightly more negative application as we think of it in our Northern Ireland terms. This reality, and I'm sure we all recognise it, we can all think of a street that looks a little bit like this. This reality preaches a sermon as well, preaches a sermon in stone. But the sermon that it preaches is, we can't agree. We are separate. We do things in our way, and you do things in your way. And we have these big stone walls between us to make sure that we stay separate. Sometimes we find incredible examples across our city of churches managing to break down some of those walls, managing to cooperate and work together. Again, some people in this room have been involved in initiatives like that. Some people over previous decades have taken immense risks to start breaking down those walls in a relational way, if not in a physical way, to start connecting up all of our different communities. But we sometimes, as we look across the city, we are left with this basic sermon in stone that says we live quite separate lives in our quite separate communities, and we're comfortable with that. Thank you very much. It's in your business plan there on page 6. You'll see that in a much more artistic way than I have managed, we've tried to include it right there at the very start of the business plan, this idea of all of these separate buildings. Now, I'm sure in some ways I'm preaching to the choir on this one as I address you guys tonight. Living separately is not good. This maybe bears repeating. Living these very segregated, distinct lives where we just stay in our own little communities and only talk to the people who talk like us and think like us and agree with us is a very, very dangerous thing. And shared spaces, ways to start joining up, start linking, start connecting together are absolutely vital. And as Chris mentioned, we've seen in this past week, and it's just been agonising to see it, we see the danger of staying separate. We see how communities can grow suspicious, can grow mistrustful, how that mistrust can escalate into violence. Those situations happen when we all stay separated, locked up, suspicious, loving little stones out from our building against the people that are seen as the other. Community connection, shared spaces, starting to meet and break down those barriers. They are not just politically correct buzzwords that we hear in campaign speeches. They are the heart and longing of everyone in this nation to start seeing ways for us to connect together. A dream of a day where we don't see all of these physical symbols of separation and segregation in the way that we do church or the way that we live as communities. So that was the start of the story, the start of filling in those blank pages to say anything but this. As we build church down here in the Titanic Quarter, can we do it together? Is that too big a dream? Well, then the next question that comes across is, of course, well, how do you actually do that? Is there something that we can do right down at the start, right when we're in the infancy of the community here in the TQ? Is there some kind of structure or pattern that we can set in place so that as things grow around here, we never end up with this situation again? Well, to that end, we started brainstorming some more. This was just the idea that seemed to unlock everything. Have you ever heard of the power of a good idea? One little simple thing. As soon as we stopped talking about church buildings, what does it look like? Does it look more like yours than mine? Is the pulpit high? Are there old pews in it? Does it have stained glass windows? As soon as you start working, as soon as you stop worrying about what different denominations working together down here might look like in terms of the building, as soon as you suggest something like a boat, all of a sudden the possibilities expand. I've had umpteen conversations where, when I start to talk to people, hopefully they mostly think I'm reasonably normal at the start. They usually think I'm a bit intense about the Titanic, but they talk to me for a little while, and then they ask me what I do, and I tell them I'm a chaplain, and you see that sort of fear, the rabbit caught in the headlights fear in their eyes. I'm talking to a minister. How do I get out of here? How do I stop this conversation? It's the ultimate terror. Oh no, I'm talking to a minister. But then, I start to try and describe the dock and say, we're thinking of doing something down here. It might look a little bit different. It might be based on a boat. And you can see them just go, I would maybe give that a try. That sounds alright. It just seems to be that one little good idea that unlocks not just the idea of working together, but the idea of the whole community being interested enough to give it a try. A boat as a business idea, it's maybe quirky enough to succeed. As part of the Titanic Quarter, it obviously sort of fits with the context and the other stuff that's going on down here. And as a base for a church, a boat is so different to all of our buildings and all the things that we have been used to doing. It's so sort of powerfully evokes the idea of neutral waters that I think all of us, no matter what our traditions, might be able to conceive of a day where we give it a go, working together as Christians from all our different backgrounds on a boat in the Titanic Quarter. So you can see it there on page 7, that rather than that segregated, divided up world of of the different church buildings lining either side of the street, what would it look together like if they were sort of smushed together, combined together, feeding through one into another on a boat down here in the Titanic quarter. So the basic vision for the dock, right at the very start, is we're on the hunt for a boat. You'll see some examples at the back of your business plan there. You'll see that we've been searching around, looking for boats. For those of you who want to know how much you're talking about, we're thinking in terms of £200,000 to £400,000 for a boat, which would be about 100 feet in length. It would be large enough for some kind of community space, some community gathering. For that kind of money you can get some quite quirky, appealing boats, river boats, restaurant barges, river cruise ships, and you can have something which would just be an appealing, open community space. Then the next question is, well, what does it actually do? Are you thinking of getting this boat and then just setting up your pews and your pulpit and doing the usual church thing on board? Well, no, I don't think that's quite what came through from all those brainstorming sessions. So you'll see on page 9 of your business plan there, if you want to flick on over, there we have the three core aspects of what we think churches working together on a boat in the Titanic quarter actually might get up to on a day-to-day basis. A community hub, a chaplaincy centre, and a commercial venture. So, first of all, this was the first one to come through in brainstorming. So the idea of a chaplaincy sofa, that on board this boat could be something that operates like the sofa in a university chaplaincy, a hospital chaplaincy. I went to Trinity. Now, don't let that impress you. That just meant that I drank a lot of coffee in Dublin for a few years. But I do remember from my days in Trinity that there was a house just off the side of the quadrangle. House 27 was Chaplaincy House in Trinity College. You go in any time of the day or night. There was always a welcome. There were always people kicking around the place. There were some unhygienic old chipped coffee mugs where you could make yourself a brew. You would sit down on the chaplaincy sofa and strike up a conversation. Sometimes it was just about the time of the day. Sometimes it was about the big, deep and meaningful questions of life. And you would find, as you chatted on the chaplaincy sofa, you might have been talking to an Anglican chaplain, to a Presbyterian, a Methodist chaplain, a Catholic chaplain. You could have been talking to anyone, to someone from another country. You could engage with absolutely anyone. The chaplaincy sofa was a place to start conversation, to sometimes have a kind of faith-based aspect to that conversation, but to be open to having the conversation with absolutely anybody. I think the chaplaincy sofa is a great model, a great way for us to do church. When we try to build parishes or local churches, quite often we lock ourselves into this quite separate way of being. We have separate church communities, separate buildings, all the rest of it. But when we approach chaplaincies, it just seems to be that kind of relational, conversational way of being Christians in the middle of a community that allows all of the churches to work together. And in almost all instances of chaplaincy that I can think of, in universities, hospitals, army bases, wherever it may be, you actually find that the chaplains from the different denominations manage to muddle along together very, very nicely indeed, and actually find themselves quite inspired and energised by the mix with different people from different backgrounds. So that is the pitch for the boat. The boat will contain the chaplaincy sofa, a relational but intentionally spiritual setting for people in the Titanic quarter to meet, to connect, to find pastoral care if they need it, to find a listening ear if they need it, to find advice if they need it, to find a place to ask the big questions of life. But they'll find that not by sitting in the pew listening to a sermon, but by connecting with this kind of relational setting on a boat, which can be sort of crewed by chaplains from all sorts of different denominations and backgrounds. In a way, we've already been able to start something that looks a little bit like this down here in the Titanic quarter. In the dock, we do a thing on Sunday afternoons called the Dock Walk. We meet at the Street Cafe in the Odyssey every Sunday. We walk down the road here, we pray, we listen to Bible readings, we chat, we talk together. It's always good crack. Sometimes it rains and there are about like 5 of us. Sometimes it is sunny and there are about 50 of us. It completely depends, but we've found whether it's 5 or 50, it seems to have been something where we've got people from Catholic, Protestant, Presbyterian, Methodist, Anglican, all sorts of backgrounds coming together on the walk, and the mix is amazing. The inspiration of being able to talk to people from a different background is absolutely incredible. It makes the walk so much more worthwhile. How fantastic would it be if that was the expression of church down here in the Titanic Quarter? Instead of us doing our separate things in our separate ways, holding on tightly to all that is important, to all that's sort of traditional to us, that we hold on to the root of our faith, but we mix with people from a different background and find inspiration and excitement in that mix. So the idea is just to provide a chaplaincy sofa on a boat. That's number one. Number two, what do those chaplains then do? Do they sit on the sofa all day? Does that sound like the easiest job in the world? Or is there actually something that they could be getting up to day, week to week? Well, back to the drawing board, more brainstorming. So the idea is that as well as being a chaplaincy centre, that the dock is a community hub. I really believe that this is something that this Titanic Quarter needs. As we look through the windows there, we see these fabulous college buildings, the art apartments, the Odyssey Arena, so many people starting to live, study, work and visit this area. But all this fabulous architecture, it doesn't necessarily build community. And do you remember the little tagline from the video at the start, where once we built ships, now we build community. We want people not just to come down here and admire the buildings, but actually to find friendships, to make connections, to really build community life and community spirit. And to do that, it needs somebody to put the kettle on. We connect around coffee, sometimes around food, sometimes around coffee. We need those spaces where we actually live out our social lives. Howard Schultz, the founder of Starbucks Coffee Company, has done loads of research into this idea of third space. Have you heard of third space? It's the idea that your first space is your work life, second space is your home life, and really increasingly in this day and age that home life is quite strictly private. We don't leave our front doors open for the whole rest of the street to call in anymore. Our home lives are very bordered and very private. But third space, that is where we socialise, that's where we connect, that's where we catch up with old friends, that's where we go out for the night, that's where we crash at the end of the day to catch up on how the day went at work. Third space. Sometimes it would have been, in the olden days, I guess it would have been the function of the village pub. You know, that idea that everyone in the whole village would congregate at the pub at the end of the working day, and all of those connections and relationships would start. I actually think that in this day and age, the culture is moving away from that pub idea, but the need is still the same. The basic human desire to connect, to be part of a sort of extended family, not a biological family, but a community family. That need is still right at the heart of who we are. Came across this little video on the BBC website recently. It's a video made about an old pub in London. And what struck me, I don't think that anything about this pub fits with the culture and the sort of the standards, the sort of ethos of the Titanic Quarter community. But what's going on in the heart of this video, the faces of all the people who found a community, found somewhere where they're accepted and known, that kind of heart is what I think people down here long for. It's called the local.
Basically, the thing I worked on from the start was the community. It's good here that everybody moves together, and anybody's in trouble, they all come together and help each other out. You've got the Domino Club in the corner. Them lads have drunk in this pub for 40 years. Getting the garden up and running and tucking up and the barbecue out there. A bit of space in this area is well needed for a lot of people. That's been successful. We did lots of birthday parties. places like this go because, again, the damage it will do the community. They haven't got the heart that this place has got.
I don't know, I find that quite moving. There's just something about all of those quite odd-looking people obviously finding somewhere that they feel that they belong, and I think that that is at the heart, no matter how odd-looking or how great-looking we might be, that's the heart of what it means to be human, to be part of something, to belong, to be part of a community, and that is what I think the dock boat can achieve down here in the Titanic Quarter. As I said, I don't think we're really in that meeting down the pub, down the local kind of context anymore, but the idea of the coffee house, that place where you meet up for lunches, for coffees, after work, whatever it might be. This picture was taken when I was spying on my wife with a telephoto lens across the crowded room of Starbucks a couple of days ago. I was just watching Susan and Katie, her mate, catch up after a few weeks of not seeing each other, laughing, telling stories, catching up on each other's lives. Some bits were deep and meaningful, some bits were light and social. It just was proper community, and that's where it happened. While I was sitting there, while I was watching them, I noticed that behind them was a group of trendy young professional women in a knitting circle. Have you heard this? Knitting is cool. Now knitting clubs are springing up all over the place, and apparently the Belfast Starbucks has this knitting circle where people can come in and chat away while they knit. And then just over behind that group of trendy young knitters, this gang of guys came in, very high-powered looking business executives, obviously spent the day closing deals and chasing down customers. They all came in, got manly drinks, sat down, and then as they sat around the table, one of them just sat back and said to the rest of them, "So, how was everyone's day?" And from there, the communication just started and the community just started. That's what I want. I want a place where I can catch up with friends, a place where someone says to me, "So, how was your day today?" I want a place where I belong, and that is what I long to see the dock boat be here in the Titanic Quarter community. Somewhere where the chaplains are maybe always ready to be the ones to put the kettle on and to say to the people who are coming in, "So, how was everyone's day?" and let the conversation go from there. Again, we've been actually able to see some of these things grow here in the Titanic Quarter over the last few months. The TQ guys have very kindly given us permission to use one of the old, not old, brand new, unused shop units down at the base of the Ark Apartments. We've been able to run mulled wine events on the coldest flipping day of the entire winter. We've run Saturday brunches, free coffee and muffin, and inviting the neighbours down to come and meet each other. It's just been a great way to see that little bit of community start to grow. We were even able on one occasion, it was just such an exciting day for me, we introduced two next door neighbours. Up to that point, everyone had all been coming from different parts in the apartment blocks. These guys, one said, I'm number 707, oh, I'm number 708. So I dragged them over, "Oh, you guys are neighbours, this is so-and-so, this is so-and-so." And one of them just looked at the other and said, "Yes, we have heard your child." But that's part of the mix, isn't it? That's part of the messy mix of being community, ups and downs, the odd little bump. It's just part of knowing your neighbours and feeling like you're part of the Titanic Quarter and part of the neighbourhood. It's our deepest longing. So the point of the boat, one more session of brainstorming. See you at the local. We want to operate the local community cafe in the heart of the Titanic Quarter, and that really is what the rest of the business plan is for. I'll not take you through it detail by detail. You can see that we have tried to really think this through as thoroughly as possible. We've costed it out, we've researched it, we've looked at case studies of similar things, we've looked at things which happen on boats. There's a church on a boat in Canary Wharf in London, St Peter's Barge. There's things like 174 Trust or the Common Grounds coffee shop that are a little sort of model of that kind of community relational thing that we're trying to suggest. They obviously aren't on a boat, so really the idea of the dock is to take together all these case studies, put them in a blender, have the coffee shop on a boat, and to call it the local, and to try and combine all these things in one. We've done financial projections which suggest that if we go for a major capital expenditure, if we shoot for close to £700,000 as a capital expenditure to get the project on the road. We reckon that within 5 years, as you'll see from all the figures back there, we reckon it can be financially self-sustaining on an ongoing basis. It won't be a constant sort of charity case, always asking for more money. It will keep itself, it will wash its own face. We've just tried to put as much work as possible into suggesting that this is a viable business idea. We've got a team of directors, a board of directors, and we've got a management team drawn from all the different sections of society, and we've formed the dock as a limited company so that we can try to get started on this business idea and try and make this community cafe, this community hub, this chaplaincy centre and this commercial venture actually work in the heart of the Titanic Quarter. I've been told that if you're trying to start a business, you have to have a BHAG. Have you all heard of a BHAG? A B-H-A-G, big, hairy, audacious goal. I reckon that the dock pitch that all three of those different core reasons for being, the community hub, the chaplaincy centre and the commercial venture, they all have a BHAG in a way. The chaplaincy centre, the big, hairy, audacious goal there is to say we do not have to do church in this separated, divided way anymore. The audacious goal is to see a new way of doing church together down here in the Titanic Quarter, and hoping that the shock waves of doing that reverberate right through the province and all across the world. The BHAG of doing the community hub is that I long to see community life down here in the Titanic Quarter, where once we built ships, today we build community. I want people to make friendships down here. I want couples to tell the story of how they first met down here. I want people who only live here for 3 months because they're working in the movie studios to be crying big snotty tears because they have to go home at the end of it. I want this to feel like a place to belong, and that is the big, hairy, audacious goal, is that that kind of community will be what springs from this little hub, this little cafe on the dock boat. And the commercial venture, well, the BHAG there, the big, hairy, audacious goal, is that I want to see this boat moored in the Abercorn Basin just behind us there within this next year. That's our big, hairy, audacious goal, is that we want to get going on this thing and to see if it can work. So, to finish, I started with a blank page. I've tried to share with you the exciting journey of the way that this has all grown from that blank page 18 months ago. And I started by saying that I do think that these big visions, like the Titanic and like the Titanic Quarter, can actually become reality. I've taken you through, from my initial scribbles to the kind of glossy version, the business plan that you have in front of you. And what I want to do tonight is to write another page of the story. You might notice that at the back of your business plans you have a little flap which is currently filled with more of those blank pages. And the idea of that is that we wanted to leave those pages blank because we've asked you people here as community influencers, as the kind of people that people listen to, we've asked you here tonight because we would like to ask for your support and for your endorsement for this whole dock concept. You can use those pages to start scribbling a message or a letter. You can maybe transfer that onto a headed paper as time goes on if you like, but we want to ask you folks tonight to really get behind this vision and to get behind this concept. To write a letter of support or endorsement, and then to start spreading the word, to start telling people about this idea, to start finding opportunities for me to give this vision, take these business plans, show them to all and sundry, spread the concept, spread the excitement, and help us to communicate this idea to the world of people who will want to connect with it, and also people to, also hopefully to the world of people who will want to financially support it and get behind it. Can you do that for us? Can you help us to fill in the next stage of blank pages? Because I think as we sit here tonight in the Titanic Quarter, we're in an area where we've seen massive visions become reality. 100 years ago, we designed in this building and then built on the slipways behind us and launched the largest man-made moving object on the planet. Big visions can become reality. And it's time to start dreaming big again at this stage in Northern Ireland's development. Thank you very much. very, very, very glad to hear that we are